Hey, Micah Erfan. Welcome, my Twitter friend. How are you doing?
I've been excited for this for a while, so I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm very excited to speak with you. I think you're an impressive guy. So, looking forward to getting your background, your story, and establishing kind of where you're coming from in terms of we're all looking at this political landscape, trying to make sense of it. That was the original title of the podcast, Searching for Political Identity. Um, I miss it. I still think it was a great frame to build upon this honest inquiry. And, life has happened. And here I am now hosting the Brian Escott show. But the effort is the same to have an honest conversation, man. And, it's in good faith and we want the best. I still believe that the different sides, and no matter what you are, you want the best thing for the country, right? So it's just a matter of perception and all that. So looking forward to the conversation. First, let's start with our recent drama that you and I were embroiled in. No, 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 not quite, but a little bit. Interesting little exchange we had, and I admit it was ultimately passive aggressive on my part, and really not that cool. So I don't feel great about that. But let me tell the audience what happened because it's actually relevant to the experience I've had over the last week on Twitter, and then we can get to know each other. Really, I want to get to know you and all of this. Okay. Sip of tea, as I say. That's my phrase. So Charlie Kirk's, horrific assassination. Erica Kirk stepped up and she's getting a lot of shit from people. People are being really horrible to her. It's disgusting. And it's tied into conspiracy with Israel. And it's just, oof, it's off the rails. You always want to search for the truth. You want to cast a wide net, do that, do all of that. But when none of the evidence really supports, when the evidence ultimately supports the fact that people are just being scumbags who are attacking her, that's just kind of where I am. People are harassing her, and this photo that was snapped of her hugging JD Vance as she welcomed him onto the stage at an event a couple days ago. People really went in on that, like, oh, they're sleeping together, and it was just this horrible thing. You just can't imagine what she's going through. And I saw a tweet of yours, and let me preface this by saying I've had 1,000 tweets that were way worse than, even if we can agree that your tweet was bad in some degree, which maybe it wasn't. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm just saying I've done a lot worse, more and more. But you had a tweet that didn't sit well with me, and I thought you were playing into that game a little bit of saying this is embarrassing for Charlie, posthumously humiliating him, this and that. I just thought, man, that is so not cool. And that's not Micah. And I said something strongly about it, hinting that I had this Democrat guest who I was impressed with, this young guy coming up. Should I host him or should I not? And I did
And I
use
was
that
like,
to
this is
play.
definitely me.
Yeah.
He's
And
definitely
so,
talking about
yeah.
me.
And so, what a passive aggressive, bitchy thing to do. Frankly, I did think first I should DM you, and then or just ignore it and whatever. And then I did the third passive aggressive grifter thing, which I do kind of regret. Not enough to delete it. I mean, I'm not that good a person. The thing went viral. Okay. The thing went viral. It really did. I got like 500,000 views on it. That's viral for me, bro. And so it stirred some controversy, and I thought it ultimately had some value. And so I kept it up. And so I guess I do want to apologize for being a little past girly about it, right? Be a man, be direct. And so here I am saying, or I want to ask you, do you have any regrets about that post? Tell me what you were thinking.
So I just scrolled back to find it. I'll say a general thing first. There's definitely things I've tweeted on X that I totally regret. I think that X is a place that rewards edginess.
So much.
And whenever you tweet for a long time, you see what kind of posts go viral. And it starts retraining the way that you communicate. And you start saying things in a shorter way. You start saying things in a more aggressive way. And it's
Mhm.
unfortunate this is the media landscape that we live within. I actually think social media has provided incentives that lead to the deterioration of our public discourse because it rewards bad behavior.
Totally.
I think this is an example of a tweet that I would not tweet now. Um, do I think it's like the least defensible thing in the world? No. I think if you look at the photos, it's like, man, I have a girlfriend. I would never want her to handle another guy like that. You know, his hands
Mm-hmm.
are on her hips and her
Mm-hmm.
arms are around his head. But if you look at the video, she treats multiple people the same way. I think Erica Kirk in general has been pretty graceful, considering everything that's happened. She said, "I forgive him." To Tyler
Yeah.
Robinson, the terrorist that killed Charlie Kirk, and I think that was one of the most phenomenal political moments we've experienced in recent history. And I've seen a lot of people on my own side. I've actually criticized some of them that have really treated her in a very nasty way, as if she hasn't actually mourned her
Mm-hmm.
husband's passing.
Yeah.
What I will say is, I think there is this narrative which exists on the internet that JD Vance has seemed to distance himself from his own wife in some ways, and maybe might have some inkling to pursue a wife that's more in the vein of what the Groypers may like, a white woman
Mm-hmm.
who's a Christian.
Yeah.
I don't think that's baseless. I mean, he criticized, he encouraged his wife to convert, basically pressured her publicly not that long ago, which is the kind of, I mean, it's something that I don't think that any husband that really respects their wife would ever do. And so I think there's something to that, but of course the internet takes things about 1,000 steps further than it might be appropriate to take them.
Sorry, little audio issue there, but I think I heard exactly what you were saying, which was, but did he encourage her to convert? Pressure her to, okay, encourage maybe, yes, I heard that speech, but did he pressure her to? I guess the pressure's on. I mean, they're on the world stage. They've got this interfaith relationship. It's a pretty progressive dynamic for a guy who's positioned himself where he's positioned himself on the political spectrum. I'll definitely grant you that. I don't know if it's fair to say that there's that the claims are not baseless, that there's something going on, that there's a rift in their marriage. But it is an interesting dynamic for a guy who's put himself in that political position, right? And how does the movement respond to that? That will be interesting. But, you know, the guy, Charlie, was killed a few weeks ago. Maybe she hasn't mourned yet. Maybe she's not, it's just what happened was so wildly horrific, dude, with the video. I mean, Jesus. And she said she hasn't watched it at all. And it's like, I hope she never does, because then it'll really just begin. But maybe she hasn't mourned yet, man. So it's just, I'm big into treating people with dignity. I haven't done it all myself. Always, I've made, like I said, a million more mistakes on Twitter, I think, than you have. And so we all do it. But the extent to that I've seen from some of these people attacking her lately has been really gross. Appreciate, very much respect and appreciate your analysis of that tweet that you made. And with that said, I guess let's move on to, I guess, the bigger picture. And I guess you seem like a really educated guy. I know you're in law school. How old are you?
I'm 22.
Okay, technical issues brought us to your app. So we're stitching this together. We're seamless. Shouldn't even have mentioned it, but keeping it raw, keeping it real here. All right, my friends. So I was just saying to you, first of all, how old are you?
22.
You're 22 and you're in law school. And I'm a recent law graduate. I went to school while I was working. We talked briefly about that before we started recording. But the reason I mention that is because we're just coming off of talking about JD Vance's relationship and how that might play in his political, to his base, if you will. And the point I was trying to then go to is, hey, I'm coming at this from a cultural perspective. Well, actually, first I should mention that I took a strong stance, talking against people who were saying horrible things about Erica Kirk and saying really horrible things. And I got a lot of hate coming my way. And suddenly I'm flooded with the anti-Semitism that I was always warned about. And so here I am confronted with that fringe base, or what I've considered to be the fringe, my determination that MAGA is better than the hate I've been getting the last week. And tying that into where JD Vance stands politically, he's got that base, there is that element, but that's not who he is. That's not who Trump is, in my opinion. Look, he's got this interfaith marriage. He's got to wrestle with that. And so I was just transitioning to say, I don't look at the political landscape. I'm not an expert by any means, really, on anything, particularly economics, particularly on policy. I think you have a smarter grasp. The reason I ask how old you are is because you seem to be so educated. So I want to get into that and how you have this knowledge. But I just look at it from the cultural perspective. I did go to law school. I did take critical race theory classes. Those I really paid attention to and liked, and I said, whoa, something isn't right here. Something is toxic. And then I saw around me in our country, in all these different pockets of society, CRT at work. And I said, man, the right has something to be pissed off about here. There is anti-white messaging. There is anti-American messaging. I'm really not comfortable with it. And so that's where I kind of got involved and being a little bit of a commentator or wannabe, right? Just this political, just this narrow spectrum, dude. So that's where I'm approaching it from. I'm kind of professing my ignorance and saying, Micah, guide me. So you're wearing a Nirvana shirt, my favorite band. Maybe I do like you, man.
Yeah, I think we could get along. Yeah,
who are you?
Who am I? That's an interesting question. I started getting involved in politics when I was 15 on a Democratic campaign in a district where we totally lost. But
one of these guys, man. How? Why? What is your dad a politician?
No, I grew up very conservative. My father was a minister. My parents worked at my mom was a youth minister. I grew up on the premises of a church property. We went to church there. We went to summer camp there, and I also went to school there. And so I always thought I was going to be very conservative. And around 15 or 16 years old, that's when Trump was elected. And I realized that I felt pretty bad that he was elected. And I couldn't understand really why I was upset that he was elected because everybody around me was celebrating. I mean, my God, I remember in 2012, people were chanting Romney in my my middle school cafeteria because the election was that day. That's how conservative of an institution my elementary school was. And so that was like the beginning of my political transformation. I think that I was originally put off from the Republican Party by Trump's rhetoric and divisiveness. And over time, a lot of my perceptions of Democrats changed. I believe that Democrats were communists who loved abortions. They just wanted as many as possible. They hated guns and freedom. I have my binder in my closet of my first political notes ever. And it literally says, what do Republicans stand for? And it lists like all these awesome things like freedom, small government. And then it has, what do Democrats stand for? Communism, Islam, like all these things. And so that's where my transformation started. And I've been involved since that first campaign that I got involved in Democratic politics, but also in advocacy. I have worked a lot on the housing issue because I believe, and this is probably one that's near and dear to your heart because you've worked in development. I believe that we have a housing shortage in this country that's been manufactured by bad policies by local governments. I believe that local governments have sabotaged development, and that is one of the many reasons why housing is extraordinarily expensive for my generation. It's the number one economic issue facing most Americans today. And so I've worked a lot. I've worked at the state level and at the city level in Houston. I passed 4 changes to local ordinances and 4 housing bills at the state level to change housing policy in the state of Texas. And so that's something that I'm especially passionate about. But in general, I've advocated for people to vote for Democrats. I was appointed by Biden whenever he was the nominee to the DNC's platform committee this last Democratic National Convention. And I also served on the executive committee of the Texas Democratic Party, not because I agree with every single thing that leftists or every radical left-wing ideology that's out there, maybe like critical race theory, so on and so forth, but because I believe that the Republican Party, in many ways, and I genuinely believe this, is an existential threat to so many of the values that I think make America great. And the Democratic Party is a preferable alternative that insofar that it is flawed, it can be made better.
So what was it that got you initially ticking to the left?
Well, I'd say that I've always been.
Besides the aversion to Trump's rhetoric, which I do understand, and I wasn't supportive of, and it really took me. Had I not gone into this deep depths of this toxic ideology, from my perspective, I wouldn't have done that mental flip. I wouldn't have gone through that route where suddenly Trump made sense to me as a figure, as crass as he is and inappropriate as he is. So I completely get it. So was there something other than his divisive tone?
I think it's funny because you said go to the left. Frankly, I consider myself a liberal in like the international and classical sense. It's kind of, I think, a separate ideology than the right and left. And so I've always had sensibilities that put me in this position. I have plenty of like maybe more culturally conservative takes because of my upbringing. I have a gun. I've been shooting since I was like 7. So what made me averse to the Republican Party is it seemed like they had very little interest in evidence-based policy, and it was increasingly a personality cult that was threatening our institutions. To me, things like the rule of law, things like free and fair elections, things like the peaceful transfer of power are the most important values a society can have, because if you have them, you can have the basic stability that's necessary for people to, in their, they're free people to go do great things, to go do incredible research, to go found amazing businesses, to have wonderful lives and relationships, and to discover truth. Those are like the basic criteria of a successful society. And I've seen that Trump, I think, totally opposes those values, and the Republican Party is totally willing to help him. I think January 6th was the moment where there was absolutely no doubt that all of the claims by Democrats that Trump was an authoritarian were true. And so I was already against Trump in his first term, but I think January 6th was the radicalization moment where I said, there's no way we can allow. I need to do everything in my power to make sure people, including Trump and those who support him, don't have power, because if they have power, they're going to destroy these institutions, which are so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, you can't argue that that's a reasonable thing to say. I mean, I remember thinking, and I, of course, was not a supporter at the time, January 7th, 2020. Was it 21? 21. Yeah.
Yeah.
2020. Was it 2020 or
So
20?
January, it was January of 2021. It was the 2020 election.
Right. Thank you. Now I'm all screwed up. Thank you. The day after, I remember tweeting, this guy's toast. He's political toast, regardless of whether or not I assigned blame to him or not. And so, boy, was I wrong about that, number one. And I guess I've come to this was the biggest hurdle for me to overcome, his election challenge, and including January 6th. I go, how am I going to swallow that and end up supporting him? And I ended up ultimately, I guess you would say, justifying it. Not that I would say two wrongs make a right, but I just looked at the broader context and I said, you know what? I'm willing to give him a pass, and that is a judgment, and I can judge me for that. That's fair. So hopefully, I'm kind of putting all my eggs in this basket that he's not going to, condemn me to the political hell, the historical hells. I do think he wants a third term and all of that, but I'm really hoping that I rolled the dice and he's going to just behave. So I can't really defend him. People say, how could you still think Mike Pence is a hero? I said, yeah, I do. And how do I square that with the fact that I love JD Vance now and all that stuff? And what would JD? I don't know. I'd really like to ask JD Vance that question, or Vivek. I know they've had thoughtful answers and they've had them for a while. But what is your answer, guys? So I'm not an expert. I know I didn't like it at the time. I wasn't comfortable. I'm not going to revise history and say that I was. I'm not prepared right now to say that I've changed my opinion on Mike Pence or anything like that. So I get all that. I do think that there's evidence to suggest that Pelosi played into it and really didn't do the situation any favors either. Is that all hogwash?
I think it's totally baseless. What happened on January 6th is Trump had a narrative that he consistently repeated, that the election was being stolen. He declared victory before even all the results were in. Steve Bannon talked about how this was their strategy from the very beginning, to declare victory, because they knew that the ballots that would lean towards Biden would be counted later. And he followed Bannon's strategy, declare victory. Mm-hmm. He said whenever the results ended up showing that Biden won, and Biden won by a lot, it wasn't just a little bit, he said, this was fraud, this was stolen, baseless. Yeah. They found that they launched a lot of these lawsuits. It's like, okay, even if this lawsuit was correct, this doesn't mean the election was stolen. Right. They couldn't even make allegations of things that would show that it was stolen. We had multiple recounts in states. Nothing happened. Some of these seats were controlled by Republicans. Look at Georgia. Mm-hmm. He still lost. We have dozens of lawsuits. They litigate at the highest levels. Republicans won a few, no substantial victories. My God, one of the victories was the election monitors should have been able to stand 6 feet away. They had to stand 12 feet away. I mean, this is the ridiculous stuff that they were, that they actually won on. And so all these people come to the Capitol. Trump's strategy is extremely clear. He wants Mike Pence to not certify the election results, which was his constitutional obligation. And some Republican senators, about 8 or 9, were down with that strategy. We're just not going to certify the free and fair election results that elected Biden. They were there to put pressure on Mike Pence. I don't think they were there to kill him. Of course, some of them said that. I don't.
And then the counterpoint they make is right. The counterpoint they make, I agreed. The counterpoint is, well, then why did they change the law, the election law afterwards? If Mike Pence really didn't have that wiggle room, why'd they make sure that he doesn't?
To remove any ambiguity. Let's just make it
interesting.
Unambiguous. I mean, like, look, we have birthright citizenship is under attack right now. It's literally explicitly in the Constitution. They don't care.
Yep.
We have Steve Bannon saying that Trump can run for a 3rd term. It's literally explicitly in the Constitution.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like but the more obvious and clear it is in how it's codified, the less grounds they have to sow doubt about whether this is possible or not. But like, even let's say that there was the power of Mike Pence to throw out those election results. I think it's unambiguous that exercising that power would be totally inappropriate and a betrayal of democracy. Imagine if Obama had Biden not certified Trump's election results that made him president. They said, we're going to just make Hillary Clinton president anyway. Yeah. That would be insane. And that's what they were trying to do, in my opinion.
You know, I can't argue that. And so what I've said is that the election was weird. I never say it was illegal or fraudulent or invalid. I just say it was weird. Everything was weird. This was a weird time. Okay. Will you grant that? Society was
during
on
COVID.
Fire. Yeah. I mean, so I think it is fair to say, oh, if you're Trump, and you can imagine him thinking, this is bullshit, you know, this would be, and so big deal, put your big boy pants on, but very strange situation. And so I was ultimately between the Russiagate stuff. So tell me about that. Does he have a right to be pissed off about all of that? Because in my mind, he did. And so you factor all of that in, and you just say, you know what? Let's hope he's not a monster, and let's just get him back in office. Whatever. That's where I'm at.
I think that whenever people point to Russiagate to try to excuse him trying to overturn a free and fair election and essentially coup the Constitution of the United States, it's not. I don't think it's a good point. I appreciate you bringing it up, though, because a lot of people think this way.
Yeah.
There was tons of unfair criticisms under Obama. I was a kid, but I look back, I watched a lot of videos of the criticisms of Obama. People were questioning whether he was a U.S. citizen. They said he was a Muslim communist. I mean, they said terrible things about him that were totally unfair and often baseless. That's what happened when Trump came into office. Trump comes into office. He says all these crazy things. Hillary's going to go to jail. You guys are all going to get locked up. Democrats are pissed off. What did Democrats do? Pretty much the same thing the Republicans did to Biden, did to Hillary, did to Obama. They said crazy stuff. They said, oh, you know, this election was basically given to him by Russia, yada, 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 yada. He has a right to be mad about that. Democrats have a right to be mad whenever he and Republicans have made unfair criticisms of Democrats. It doesn't give anybody a right to coup the government. That's ultimately not a crime against the Democratic Party. It's a crime against the American people. It's a crime against the institutions that allow us all to enjoy a better society. But the thing is, I think liberals get really caught on January 6th. I don't even really talk about it anymore, but it was a radicalization moment for me. The big concern is Trump's back in power now, and everything he's doing now is so much worse than what he was doing before. I think that we are witnessing an authoritarian consolidation day by day by day. And I don't know, I maybe some folks don't see it on the right, but I think if you looked and you imagined Biden doing what Trump is doing right now, right-wingers' their hair would be on fire. And rightfully so. I don't think any president from any party should have the power that Trump is trying to exercise right now.
I don't think there's any doubt that, put it this way, he's not exactly a libertarian president. People thought he might have a libertarian vibe. No, he's definitely into wielding the state power. And to your point, what if the shoe's on the other foot? And that's always the question when you're crossing boundaries and breaking norms and all of that. And he is. I'll give you all of that. So far, all of that is granted. So far, my line has been to say, you know what? He's being bold. He's being energetic. He's controversial. He's all of that. But I do like his policies. I do think they're effective. I do think they're based in rational reason. And, you know, you can only say that for so long. I get that. But that's just kind of where I am. But I concede that there's a reason to be frightened. I mean, when I did a little show a couple weeks ago or 2 weeks ago covering the No Kings protest, I tried to get inside the minds of the protesters. And it wasn't that hard, frankly. I concede that I understand why people are scared. I really do. So I happen to see it the way I see it, but I do understand why people see it differently. So I need to reflect that more in terms of my language, just on a personal note. So I hear you.
I appreciate you, Brian. I think you're a very good faith person. That's why I wanted to come on here.
Yeah.
I'm going to list a few things that I think illustrate the authoritarian consolidation. Then I have some questions about the policy aspect because we don't have to talk about authoritarianism the whole time. Like just some things that touch my life personally. We have had my university, the University of Virginia, was that our president, Jim Ryan, was pressured out by the Trump administration. They basically told us they will not continue funding our university if we have Jim Ryan as our president. So he had to resign. That is
Jim Ryan's deal.
Well, Jim Ryan wasn't a particularly like far left president, but he was a lot of UVA alumni that are conservative don't like Jim Ryan because he's not an actual explicit conservative. He's maybe more on the liberal side. And so they had a bone to pick with him with some of the decisions that he's made. So they used their friends in the Trump administration, which there's plenty. RFK Jr. is a UVA law alumni. Harmeet Dillon, the civil rights attorney for the DOJ, she is a UVA law alumni. Very powerful. They used their pressure and they said, we're not going to continue to provide funding to the university if you have this guy around. So, of course, he resigns. He does the thing, tries to put a university first. But the coercion is not done. Now they say, we have a compact that we want you to sign to guarantee that you continue to get funding that you're entitled under federal law. And that guarantees that you're not going to get further investigations by the Department of Justice. And that compact they tried to pressure us into was something that I protested personally, would have allowed the administration to assert administrative control over the university, to hire and fire professors, to have a say over our curriculum, to cap the number of foreign students let into our university. And this is all unilateral executive action. This isn't a congressional choice, something the presidency and Congress working together to change how public funding works. It is basically the president unilaterally weaponizing funding that's appropriated in a non-political way for all universities. And he's using it as leverage to try to basically assert administrative control over universities, which are supposed to be independent, academic entities. Even if you don't like what universities do, I think plenty of universities have gone too extreme on the woke left-wing stuff. And they've had communists on staff and all these things. The president shouldn't be able to take control of our public universities, especially without Congress giving him the right to do so.
I think ideally, certainly, you wouldn't have either of those situations. And I'm not going to say that it's necessarily justified, but it does tie into, this is why I continue to do my thing and speak out, because I happen to get this experience in upper education with this left-wing ideology, and it seems to be core to what Trump's doing. So the first question you asked me, I can give some semblance of a thoughtful answer, which is to say, I don't think I'll be able to on the other ones, but which is to say, no, in a vacuum, I don't like the idea of that scheme that you just described. It doesn't make any sense. It would be highly inappropriate. But having seen what I've seen a little bit behind the curtain, I go, geez, is it unprecedented enough to where this drastic action is actually a net benefit? And in that case, can I live with it? That's just kind of where I am. I see both sides, certainly.
I think there's a lot of people, all the reasonable folks that I know that support Trump, acknowledge, they're like you, they acknowledge that a lot of this stuff that's happening right now might be even abuse of power. It's certainly extreme and unprecedented. But the idea is the left is so bad that this is not worse.
Yeah.
And I agree that the wokes can be annoying, right? Like I've been a white man at the University of Houston, one of the most diverse schools in the country. We had a left-wing history professor which assigned Marxist podcasts as an assignment. But I've also had conservative professors. Certainly there's a skew.
Sure.
Do I think that I'm willing to give up, I don't know, the rule of law?
Right.
I don't know, the basic institutional integrity of academic institutions so that we can have conservatives reverse the tables rather than having left-wing bias, we have right-wing bias in our academic institutions? That doesn't seem like that really makes the world a better place. But I have another example, and this is one that I'm sure you're familiar with, which is the attacks on law firms. Jenner and Block, Perkins Coie, Covington and Burling. We had so many different law firms, Paul Weiss, sort of Kirkland and Ellis, Latham and Watkins. The biggest law firms in America were targeted with executive orders that basically, if they were allowed to go through, would have destroyed the law firms, just completely obliterated the law firms. And they were targeted because they've represented Democratic clients. They've litigated against the Trump administration. Some of them have had current partners or former partners, which are high-profile Democrats. And so Trump used the office of the presidency to basically try to obliterate economic entities that are aligned with the Democratic Party or have been involved in some sort of opposition to him. That seems totally crazy. Now, the courts have ruled that wasn't legal. Unambiguously, it's over. Mm-hmm. But plenty of law firms signed deals with the Trump administration to try to win his favor, offering hundreds of billions of dollars of pro bono legal services to his aligned causes. I think that's just another example of him weaponizing the power of the presidency to coerce major economic institutions to be subservient to him. And I think once that happens enough, we stop really having a democracy. We have an oligarchic, autocratic regime. And I think that the negative consequences of that are enormous. And they last far beyond it's Trump. Maybe it's JD Vance. Then we'll have autocrat after autocrat after autocrat. And it really will lead to the degeneration of American society. Do you think of that differently than I do?
Not really. I think it was a good analysis, and I don't have much to argue with it, really. I think it's, Trump is a scorched earth, ego-driven, competitive guy who needs to be monitored. That's just the reality. And so my hope and my wager has been that, I guess it's really two. One, that the core of MAGA is not as rotten as people have made it out to seem to be. And two, that the guardrails can support Donald Trump. And yes, and it's a gamble. And I acknowledge it's a big gamble because we're gambling with the most important thing we have, which is our country and our structure. So that's how I see it. It's an intense time. I grant you that. And I'm hoping for the best, dude. I really am.
So let's talk about policy. You said that you supported Trump's some major policies from Trump. Does that include things like the tariffs?
Wait, who's interviewing who here? Okay, no, go ahead. Continue.
No, I know, but sorry.
No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
We're technically on my recording software now, so I'm very...
Damn it, I'm in your house, so hit me again.
But you said that you support a lot of policies from him. Does that include like the tariffs, the indiscriminate deportation, the arrest of even U.S. citizens and their imprisonment for sometimes multiple days? Like, are these policies that you think go too far, but what they're trying to do is good? Like, what would you point to as like the quintessential examples of the good policy?
I think that is what you said. I don't know today if I would have the guts to order some of these policies. I would say that I think they're directionally pointing in the right direction, and he's scorched earth. He's going, I think there's something to this idea that even though you hate to see anyone going through trauma, period, there is something to strict enforcement, and that's who Trump is, right or wrong. Strictly, and the message will go through, and the system will be improved. I think there's something to that. What was the first part of your question before the deportation? The tariffs. With the tariffs, I would say the people who I respect most, I am thinking of libertarians mostly. The most economically literate people seem to think that tariffs are not a good idea, and I totally get that. Most of them do concede that as a negotiating tool, they can be useful. I'm hoping that Trump is going to get something right. I'm hoping that the Trump magic is going to happen here, where he just shakes the 8 ball and then it comes out somehow. I don't have an economic background. I think so I really don't want to comment beyond. My faith is in Trump that he knows what he's doing and that the end result is going to be good because he's surrounded by people who can keep him straight where he needs to be kept straight. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that the tariffs are one of the most profound and obvious acts of self-economic sabotage we've seen in maybe global history. I mean, unemployment is 4.26%. They won't release the data. It's been two months since they released the data ever since Trump sacked the BLS commissioner, because that BLS commissioner released unemployment data which showed the economy wasn't doing so well. So we're not getting it from the feds, from the federal government anymore. But we still have independent data which says, unemployment's up. Everybody knows that. We know if you look across different groups, manufacturing unemployment, we're down over 15,000 jobs. Black unemployment skyrocketed. Youth unemployment skyrocketed. So inflation is up as well. Businesses are being hit by these tariffs. You talk to people like my dad has a business. They know that it's not foreign countries that are paying the tariffs, right? It's American companies that are paying the tariffs. If you want to get your goods, processed and you want to go pick them up, you have to pay the tariff to get them. And we know that foreign exporters are not eating the cost because there's an index that tracks the prices of imported goods. And that index has actually showed that importers have not reduced prices at all. Actually, importers have increased prices a little bit. So the tariffs are the biggest tax hike on Americans in American history if you take them all as one singular tax hike. And the idea that this is a bargaining chip was the best one. Like I think that the best defense of the tariffs is they're going to be a bargaining chip. But they promised, you remember this, 90 trade deals in 90 days. It has been 10 months. We have less than a dozen trade deals. A lot of those trade deals are with countries that we already had free trade with. South Korea. We had a free trade agreement with South Korea. We imposed tariffs on them. Now we have a new trade deal that's less free than it was before. I don't see where the victory is here. I think Trump just doesn't understand how tariffs work. Is your idea that like they're still trying to work on trade deals, or they're just going very slowly?
Hopefully, I guess it would be that, in the same way that he didn't end the Ukraine war in one day, maybe that was a bit ambitious, but that he's pointing in the right direction. He's trying to get these things accomplished. So that's kind of where my faith is. I'd like to. Time will tell. I want to give him more time. And
I mean, I just think
maybe I was unfair. Go ahead.
I just think the issue is whenever we imposed some of the highest tariffs that we'd imposed on any country, on Switzerland. Switzerland had no tariffs on the United States, on 99.5% of goods from the United States, and very low tariffs on the rest.
There's something about gold with that one, isn't there? Something about gold I remember hearing about. But Trump has this master plan, and it's all about money and hard-backed currency, perhaps, and gold. I don't know. So, but I hope he has a master plan.
Me too. I mean, the U.S. dollar is down 10%, or maybe 11% since he took office. They were supposed to make the U.S. dollar strong again, but now countries are de-dollarizing.
I guess again, my hope is that we're resetting the international trading system in a way that is going to incentivize American manufacturing, and maybe there's pain involved.
Unfortunately, manufacturing unemployment is up. We have less manufacturing unemployment. But I appreciate you, because instead of actually making the ludicrous arguments that some of them make, which is, actually everything's fine and this is totally working out as we expected.
No, I take your I take your word for it about the data. And again, I came for the cultural issues. I'm staying for the economic issues. But it is interesting because, to your point, and this is why Trump is an interesting figure, because what is he? Can you really put your finger on what he is politically? I came for the cultural issues, and I said, okay, I guess I'm a conservative now. And on the economic front, most of them would say, no, tariffs are bad. Free trade is good. And then here's Trump doing this. And so it's like, my mind goes, well, maybe Trump's just a mold breaker doing his own thing. He's got vision. I like it.
I like it whenever people do policies that help Americans. And right now, I think a lot of Americans are hurting. I think that's the reason why the No Kings protest was the largest single-day protest in American history. I was at one in Charlottesville. We have only 45,000 people. That protest, at least 3,500. It was incredible. I couldn't believe that many people could come out in Charlottesville. And we just had an election in Virginia. We won the Legislative Assembly by the most that we've won since 1987. That's because people are hurting. It's not because the Democratic Party is magical and everybody loves us suddenly. It's because people don't like what the Republicans are doing right now. Yeah,
I wonder how much. So you think?
Go ahead.
You think it's a lot of economically driven, as elections typically are?
Absolutely. I think it is the economy. That's what sunk Trump the first time, because the COVID economy was not doing very well. And it's sinking him again because he promised a golden age, and every single major economic indicator, other than the stock market, has deteriorated since he became president. And he's doing what Biden did and saying everything's fine, actually. I fixed it all. Wait, what? Oh, you're upset about prices? Prices are all down. Sometimes they're down over the 100%. I mean, it's ridiculous gaslighting. Nobody buys that.
Right. Yeah, no, I give it to you. Democrats had a great night. And so there's some momentum there. And so as the momentum shifts again, will I reconsider my political identity? I don't know, man. I only know, I love you, man. I really do. I only know that I want what's best for people. I am trying to keep an open mind. I got exposed to a lot of the conservative libertarian ideology. And so the tariffs is a really interesting thing to talk about, and an area for me to say, yeah, it doesn't really align with the new identity that I thought I had. And so perhaps it's an example of me being too deferential to Trump. I don't know. It's a really good point. I want things to work out. I'm not committed to voting for Republican for the rest of my life. Give me a competent person. A lot of this was personality. I mean, Biden and Harris, it was just a weak ticket. So give me someone who doesn't play into the culture war bullshit, who just is competent, says it like it is. Easily, I could see myself voting for a Democrat again. I'm not a committed Republican. I'm not working for them.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't think anybody should be a strict partisan. I support the Democrats a lot right now because I think they're better. If the Republicans became better than the Democrats, we're going to support the Democrat. We're going to support the Republicans. That's how it should be. I think a lot of the issue with our politics is people are so consumed with their political identity that they start molding their views substantively to fit whatever their party has shifted to. And that's what's happened with the Republican Party, I believe. I mean, look at the Republicans. They've talked about the deficit persuasively for decades. Right now, the deficit's $2 trillion in the past 10 months. That's extraordinarily awful. Republicans have had one big legislative accomplishment, the one big beautiful bill. It made the deficit even worse. Half those senators that won in swing states, actually all the Republican senators that won in swing states, that ran on lowering the deficit. But now they're pro increasing the deficit. Why? Because that's what Trump wants. And what Trump wants is what Republicans want. And I'm a Republican. Therefore, this is what I believe. People need to start thinking for themselves. And I'm glad that you do that. But okay, yeah. Actually, you should ask questions.
No. He's such a force of nature, psychologically, politically. He really has cast a shadow over the entire party. So what it becomes after him is going to be really interesting. In fact, almost more interesting. What comes next? Because how do we react to Donald Trump is going to be interesting. And I like the Republican bench. I think it's really deep. And so DeSantis, Cruz, Vivek, Rubio, Burgum, I think it's a deep bench. Who on the Democrat side, I don't know.
I think the Republican bench.
What do you think?
I think there's people like Vivek, which I don't think he gets enough credit. He actually has substantive views on how to fix many issues. Like he thinks school choice is the solution on making education better. Like you could tell this is a guy who actually thinks, here's my vision for how we improve people's economic quality of life and Americans' quality of life. And I wish that conservatives were a lot more like Vivek, because right now I think the conservative party or the conservatives writ large are largely consumed with destroying their political opponents and going after people they don't like. Like instead of having an agenda to, let's say, improve the economic conditions of Americans, their big economic policy seems to be, I see this a lot, especially in the online space, deportations. There's all these people that are here that shouldn't be here. They're taking American jobs. If we just kick them out, everything will be better. That is a very negative economic agenda. It's also when it's not rooted in data, it's ultimately rooted in prejudice. They have this talking point, H-1B visas. So they're immigrants, they're stealing American jobs. There's not enough to go around for everyone. Every single study that's been conducted on the issue of immigration has shown that yes, while immigrants do consume some jobs, they come here and they take jobs, they also create jobs because immigrants buy things. The American superpower for a century now has been the fact that the most talented, skilled professionals in the world want to come here and they can found their businesses here. We have a huge brain drain. We are the brain drain of the world. We're draining the most talented people from around the world. And yet the Republican economic policy seems to be turning that drain off, cutting off America from the world, rather than, I don't know, fixing the terrible healthcare system, fixing our terrible housing situation, our energy situation. You go across the board, almost every single sector of the American economy has deep issues, and Republicans, I don't think, are spending very much time speaking to those, especially the ones that are probably going to be the nominees in 2028. J.D. Vance is a fantastic example of this right-wing populist, very much us versus them politics, not very policy-oriented in my view.
Well, the way I could respond to that, defending Trump, is to say, and therefore my decision to support him at this time is, perhaps Trump is wielding the power where he can. This is the most charitable way to view it. He's wielding the power when he can, and he's following the traditional conservative Republican philosophy where he can't. Education, healthcare. This is not the domain of government. Let the free market handle it. It will actually be better. That's the Vivek argument. Maybe that's it.
I just don't see it. I mean, let's talk about. I guess we can talk about deportations for a second, just as a substantive policy matter, because this is one that we've seen so many claims about how this will help the American worker, and we've already had 2 trillion. 2 trillion. Oh my God, 2 million people deported. Meanwhile, unemployment is actually up. It's higher than it used to be. I don't think anybody can point to some sort of substantive metric that's been improved since Trump has taken office. Meanwhile, all these deportations have taken place. The policy is not really working.
Well, you could say there's cross current. You could say there's cross currents in the policy with the deportations and the tariffs. The numbers might not at this time bear out the changes that are happening.
Okay,
Am I good or
the
what?
tariffs are so bad that the deportations can't fully offset their negative effect.
Right.
Okay, I'll take that argument.
I mean that's what I would say. I mean, the tariffs have taken longer than anticipated to have their intended effect. Therefore, they are setting this cross current into the economy. And so, Trump is saying, I'm willing to take the heat on the numbers for now to implement what I believe is the correct blueprint for the economy moving forward.
Yeah.
That would be the best thing I could say in his defense.
I mean, to me, it just doesn't seem like the focus of the administration is doing substantive economic policies that have like a positive way of like a clear positive channel in which they're going to impact Americans. It seems very much.
Well, I wonder, like, would Vivek, the ultimate intellectual and articulator of the libertarian economic hands-off private economy philosophy, would he have anything better to say? I'm curious. Is Trump not doing exactly what the libertarians want him to do? I don't know.
Yeah, I think he would be very different, actually.
But I want things to be better for people, Micah. I really do. And I'm not at the end of my road here, especially with the economics, like I've said a few times already. So one day maybe I'll look back at this libertarian stuff and go, man, they're just ignorant. They just want people to fend for themselves. But at the moment, I see a guy like Elon Musk, obviously not a perfect guy, but I go, I think I'm going to trust his instinct on economics, and he's calling for market feedback loops, and this is one of the greatest product creators of our time, and he's saying that it doesn't work. Government services don't work. That's just where I am right now. I want the masses to I want the best for people, man. I am a liberal at heart. I was raised in a very progressive home. I want people to be taken care of. I've just been indoctrinated the last few years with this idea that it can be done through charity and so forth much more effectively, and it's much better for everyone. It's actually better. It reduces the poverty and all of that.
I mean, that's great to get into. I mean, Elon, I think, is a psychopath, and I think if you spend time looking at his Twitter, I don't even see how we could disagree on that. And this guy reposts actual neo-Nazi accounts whose pinned tweet is like Hitler. It's literally Hitler. And he's told, like, "Hey, Elon, you keep tweeting Nazis."
Admittedly, I've missed things before. I've done that without knowing, so I'm not excusing it, but it's happened.
But he's been told this is a Nazi. Like, Elon, hey, this is a Nazi. He's super terminally online. He's been accused of being a Nazi before.
But maybe it's like, hey, a good point is a good point, and this is the most charitable way you could look at it. And
I would never retweet.
Not that I would necessarily do it.
I would never retweet a Nazi saying that the
not
white
knowingly, but maybe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I would never retweet.
No, the white race is what?
Oh, the white race is being replaced. I mean, they are pushing this narrative. The white race is being replaced as part of an agenda. Yeah. This is it's largely an anti-Semitic deep state. Some sort of big cabal is trying to replace white people. They hate white people. White people are under attack. Elon is 100% on board with this narrative spread by the Nazis. He shares it from open neo-Nazi accounts. And I don't buy the narrative that a guy who's extremely terminally online, who's interacted with these posts and these accounts over and over and over again, who's been accused of being a Nazi after doing what appeared to be a Nazi salute. We can disagree about that. I don't believe that he just simply doesn't know who these people are, or thinks, yeah, the neo-Nazi narrative, like they take it too far, but it's not irresponsible for me to share one of the core narratives that leads them and justifies their ideology in the
Right.
first place.
And the only charitable way to defend that behavior would be to say, maybe the idea is, hey, look, obviously I don't support the nasty stuff that this person is saying, but if they have something that is reasonable and that I do agree with, why don't I share that because it's a good thought and I bring them into the conversation this way, not with the other stuff. But if you totally shut the door to people and even fail to recognize what may be valid concerns they have, then the radicalization continues. And so bringing it into the sunlight could be the best argument. And so again, not that I would do it necessarily, but I think I would talk about it and say, hey, this person, you can't support any of this, but let's take the thing that makes sense and talk about that.
Well,
I
so
think that's okay.
he's had a billion opportunities to show that he doesn't support these people's ideology. He could condemn them once. He could have said something about the neo-Nazi group chat of young Republicans, including a state senator that was a Republican, talking about gas chambers.
But is this like a Sydney Sweeney interview situation where it's just like, hey, if I have a problem with something, you'll know it. You don't hear me espousing Nazi views personally, and if I have a problem with something, you'll hear me say it. I think that's where it is. I think there's. Go ahead.
I think if you go into this thinking Elon Musk doesn't have a far right ideology, you can find a way to look at
or
all
anti-Semitic.
Okay, so it's just not an anti-Semitic. I don't know if he's anti-Semitic, but I do believe he has a far right ideology. And he's at least comfortable sharing Nazi posts and being like
in
associating
the
himself with them.
context of this political environment. Which again, suddenly I have this expertise, as you can tell from this conversation. I know nothing about nothing, but this little sliver that I got a taste of. Here's Elon Musk. We now consider him far right, but is he, or is he just
Absolutely.
far right in the context of this landscape that's been poisoned by the ideology of the far left?
I think
And
he's
so,
absolutely far right.
Is he really far right?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, they're pushing.
And what are the characteristics of the far right?
The far right is racist. The far right believes in a race essentialist politics where there's different racial groups that are competing with each other. They essentialize. They're collectivists in the same way that like Marxists are. There's like actual warfare between different racial groups. And they believe in an authoritarian use of the state. There's the friend-enemy distinction, something that Matt Walsh is openly in favor of. It comes from Carl Schmitt, an actual Nazi philosopher. They say, yeah, we are the white people. We are the Christians. We have these certain characteristics. This is our group. The state is our cudgel to use against the groups that hate us. We will use it to force them out, to get rid of them. They're our enemy. And
So this is actually an extremely... Go ahead. Keep finished, please.
Everything that Elon has said indicates that he is supportive of the folks that push this narrative. He supports the AfD in Germany, the German far right. He supports Reform UK. There's an inordinate number of nasty, terrible things that those parties have endorsed, and he's never distanced himself from any of it. And so I just don't see, like, the notion that Elon's a centrist and like the left went super far left, I just don't think actually melds with the huge ideological transformation we've seen from Elon. He used to talk about UBI and he used to talk about economic issues and be pro-immigration. Now it is this race, realist politics over and over and over again every single day.
I agree with you. And what I would say is that I definitely agree that there is a white identity thing going on that he's concerned with. And my first thing to say would be is it's okay to be proud of your white identity, just as it's okay for everyone to be proud of their identity and to want to preserve your culture and all of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And so the minute it goes beyond, the minute he goes from what I view as MAGA to Groyper, then I have a problem. I just haven't seen it yet. I agree with you that he has never distanced himself from groups that have maybe gone to that point. But I can't specifically point to instances what the ADF has said. I don't know. I know he's very anti-Islamic immigration. I think there's That's an interesting thing. You know, I don't want to be reflexively Islamophobic, and I'm not. But is there something that the God Sods, the Elon Musks, the Matt Walshes, the Ben Shapiros, is there something to this culture war, to that culture war? I don't know. I need to study that one. But all I do know is that I took some classes in law school, which you're in right now. And so going into law school, I said, because again, I'm a liberal, raised in a progressive home, not paying attention to anything, going into law school. And then I get these conservative professors who are teaching me, or re-educating me on a deeper level about the basics of our American system, and I re-fall in love with it. And I go, this is great. Conservatism rocks. You know, equality for all. I'm an egalitarian. This fits with me. Wait, why was I a liberal again in the first place? But not really thinking about it. But CRT classes, boom. And then I go, not only do I not feel like a Democrat anymore, but I do think there's this anti-white narrative. And so I understand why people would be reacting in a way and getting defensive about their white identity and saying white people founded this country and gave us the system we have, and it's true, man. It's true. Now I would say it's been modified. It's been modified by everyone who's been a part of it, and we should continue obviously striving for that perfect union, all of that, truly. But there is a base, there is a foundational culture, and so you can't totally avoid the culture war conversation. There is the concept of assimilation. You can't have a culture of nothingness. You know, you can't have just the ingredients of the melting pot without the melting pot. And so that's where that's where I'm coming from. I'm okay with defending the melting pot. And I'm okay with white people sticking up for themselves. Beyond that, it gets dicey, and I've yet to see it myself, but I'll keep an eye out for it.
I think the whole white people doing anything collectively or being concerned with their whiteness, I just think that's a liberal ideology that I don't believe in. I think that each person is an individual. Individuals do things, groups don't do things. Groups are just groups of individuals. So some of the individuals might have all done something. Whenever people say white people built this country, people who happen to be white built this country, but not all white people built this country. Like, I didn't build this country. I was born when the country already existed. You didn't build this country. None of these groypers on the internet who incessantly call me Jewish, I'm actually not Jewish, but like, you know, are tweeting relentlessly about the white race and how fantastic they are. They didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. You've built nothing. You've accomplished nothing. You're trying to claim the accomplishments of other people because you happen to share the same skin tone. It's ridiculous. It's like saying tall people built this country or people with brown hair achieved these things. Yeah, people with brown hair achieve those things. I didn't achieve them. And so I get it. There was a moment, especially in 2020, where you saw a lot of race-based collectivist messaging from the left, where people said, white people all have this issue. I don't want to hear your opinion if you're a white person, right? And this is like the reverse of what the racists do, right? It is like anti-white prejudice. But the solution to that is not white people just being racist and having their own race-based collectivism. It is saying that all this race-based collectivism is completely stupid. I don't care like what your skin tone is. It doesn't matter. White people don't have anything in common other than their skin tone. Like you mentioned this point about culture. America does have a certain culture. That's not a white people culture thing. It's like just that America, like there's plenty of African Americans here. They've been here for a very long time. They've been here longer than a lot of white people. We are a country of tons of different cultures that coexist with each other. And I don't think it's necessarily based in people's skin tone. I think it's based in their cultural practices, how we greet each other, how we talk to each other, when we eat, where we work, how we think about working, how we think about women and gender and all these other things. I don't think it has anything
I completely agree with you. And that's why I rejected critical race theory in law school. And that's why I don't embrace the white identity reaction movement, which is what I call the woke right. Now it makes sense for anyone questioning the use of that term. It's what they have in common. What woke means in this instance is the racial identity concerns. And so I don't go there. I go, MAGA is the racially neutral, constitutional, abiding, unless, you know, Trump really is convincing about something. But it's when it comes to race, that's how I view MAGA, and that's how I view our society. And so I completely agree with you. But I would just say, having gotten the deep dive in it, and not only the material in law school, which was great. I had the best professor, Micah. He was awesome. He had been at Yale with so many of the Supreme Court justices and the Clintons, and so he would talk about being at the black table at the cafeteria every Friday, and you had to bring your A game, and it was students just. And Thomas was there and getting a flavor for his. Thomas threw him 6 touchdowns in a game against Harvard one day. It's just really fascinating. So I loved the professor. Material was controversial, didn't sit well with me, but the reactions of all the students was even worse and even more disturbing to me. And so, having been through that, I, for some reason, took another one, signed up for the following semester, couldn't get enough. And during COVID, with I mean, it was very strange, dude. And I understand the reaction of the whites, of the Groypers. I've tried to be a bridge and try to help the situation in my small way. I don't think you have to worry about me joining Richard Spencer or Nick Fuentes in any protest. I'm also not a guy who would be at a No Kings protest, though I understand the concerns there, frankly. So
you're Jewish, correct?
Yeah.
I don't think they'd let you come. Unfortunately, I don't think you'd be invited.
Right. Well, exactly. And so there's that too. And I've been getting a lot of that the last week, like we talked about earlier. And so it's ugly, man. And they blame us for everything. And I've been saying so far is, look, there's been, to the extent that there's pages and pages of screenshots of Jewish authors who have written anti-white, straight up critical race theory books, I think we've got to own that and say, hey, this is pretty troubling.
But I don't think Jews have to own that. I think those individual people have to own what they say, right? So if there's I don't think that Jews have to own the fact that individual Jewish people have done stuff that you don't like.
You're absolutely right. And I got called out on that by someone very thoughtfully in a comment. And I was like, you know what? Thank you so much. That was me trying too hard to build bridges. You're absolutely right. Jews don't, and period. Jews don't owe anyone an explanation. Those screenshots don't represent whatever percentage of the Jewish population they make up. That's all they represent.
Exactly. I don't have to apologize for the sins of other white people.
Right.
I don't.
No, you don't. And I'm trying to meet these people where they are. And sometimes I say things that are not, that I wouldn't probably say had I not been trying to do that.
Well, and I appreciate the effort. I mean, there's a Groyper at my school that I confronted. A lot of people were making fun of him because he's posting some insane stuff on our joint UVA story. There's like a university-wide story. So he'd post Nick Fuentes, he'd post Holocaust denial, and everybody attacks him. I would just talk to him. But I never would concede any ground on the views. But a lot of these people just substantively believe things that are not even close to what's true. Like this guy believed that the Holodomor genocide in the Soviet Union by Stalin against the Ukrainian people was done by the Jews. Mm-hmm. Stalin was a Georgian. Has nothing to do with the Jews whatsoever, but he believed that. He believed the Armenian genocide was done by the Jews. That was done by the Turks. Mm-hmm. So these guys have a extremely warped ideology, largely because they're terminally online and they consume a bunch of content which is just straight up misinformation. And also, they have a proclivity to believe things that are ridiculous and not true because it feels good. I think a lot of people these days have ideologies that are ultimately about making themselves feel good. I thought you saw that with the wokes. The wokes wanted to say, I'm really marginalized, I'm really oppressed, my opinion matters more than other people, I deserve special treatment. Well, you see it with these Groypers. I'm a white man, I'm a Christian, women should be subservient to me. All the other races are inferior to me. Everybody should thank me all the time for what my heritage forefathers have done for this country. I should have way more rights than anybody else. That feels great to believe. I want to believe like I'm the superior caste of society, but it's ridiculous. And you're a clown. If you believe that, you're a clown. And we can have a conversation about why that's a ridiculous view, but I'm never going to say that it's valid because it's not. I think like that's what they did with the wokes, actually, and that's why wokeism is pretty much gone now.
Yeah, and the underlying question after the dust settles of this culture war stuff, hopefully we win. Us being the, in this case, centrist. You know, the centrist position is not always going to make sense and be the right thing, but I think on the culture war, being a centrist in the sense that you just want a racially neutral society that is American culture, you know, for whatever it is, we don't need to analyze the composition of the American culture. It is what it is, and if you can assimilate into that and therefore maintain your freedom, if that makes sense, then and you come here legally, then I think MAGA would welcome you. So the question is, why are these both sides feeling like they're victims, and is there the economic situation? And you know, the libertarians would say it's the central bank and the economic underlying economic system that is the cause of inflation. The left would say it's capitalism, right? So what is the diagnosis for why people are feeling so victimized and like they're not thriving in this country? And is it economic? Probably. And so who has the right solutions? That's where it gets
I
interesting.
mean, I think the left and the right. I mean, if the libertarians are definitely wrong, central banks are had around the world. Inflation has not been that high. We had high inflation after COVID. The entire world had high inflation. We had a little bit higher because the government decided to borrow trillions of dollars. It didn't need to borrow. But okay, we have 2 or 3% inflation this year. It's over 3%, in part because of Trump's tariffs. Is that the reason why the economy is not doing so well for Americans? Not really. It's okay to have a little bit of inflation. Obviously, it's not capitalism. I don't think that the leftists even know how to define capitalism. Capitalism is everything that's bad ever in the economy is tied to capitalism, and we want something that works and is awesome and great. It's socialism. Can we tell you what that looks like? Absolutely not. Like I've looked into all the socialist economic models that have been presented by modern socialist economists. None of them make very much sense. They basically posit a government that is extraordinarily competent and never abuses its power, which is something that is ridiculous. So I guess I kind of ignore those extreme views. Whenever I look at our country, I look at a government that is consistently making very bad choices at the local, state, and federal level. Remarkable. You look at where the academic research is on policy, totally different place from where our actual policy is. We discovered a lot of things that we have not implemented whatsoever. Like you look at our healthcare system. Every other developed country has a universal healthcare system that is coherent. We have the most fragmented healthcare system in the world. We have like 10 different systems. We have Medicare, Medicare Advantage. We have Medicaid. We have CHIP. We have the VA. Then we have the individual marketplace. We have the individual marketplace for businesses. Then we have the employer marketplace. What the hell? And then we have the unregulated individual marketplace. No reasonable policymaker would create this system. And that's because we have institutions that are fundamentally dysfunctional. Our politicians have really bad incentives. And those incentives lead them to consistently make really bad decisions. And if we want to have a government that actually works, we have to fix the sickness at the heart of our political system so that our politicians are actually incentivized to make good decisions for us rather than consistently doing what they have been doing, which is pretty bad.
Well, that was foundational to, that was one of the angles I was looking at my search for political identity initially and still doing, albeit under the new name, which was, is democracy necessarily the best foundation? I remember taking an Uber, and there was this guy from Pakistan, and he was extremely proud of Imran Khan, who has now been arrested, I believe, or he's now in tremendous legal trouble. I'm not saying it's invalid, those reasons, but he took quite a fall. He was this populist figure, former cricket player, as you probably remember, and this cab driver was like, democracy is the most easily corrupt system. And it just makes you think, is democracy necessarily the best vehicle? Of course, wasn't it Plato who said that a philosopher king would be the best model? So that's putting that to the side for a second. Where I'm going with this is I had a guest who would frequently appear on my podcast. I'm going to have him on again soon, actually. He's now running. He's mid-60s, lives in Arizona. He's running for Congress. Herbie K is his name. Interesting, very smart guy, autodidact, had some legal problems, made some severe mistakes, paid for them. Not an angel by any stretch of the imagination, but a smart guy. And he actually, while in prison for 6 years for serving time for a financial crime, he authored a book called A Radical Reset, in which he introduced this core theory called anti-politism. And anti-politism is basically a lottery system for choosing our leaders, a qualified lottery. You have to have this type of education or be a business owner with this many people working for you, and so forth. For one chamber, and the other chamber would have slightly different qualifications, but that's the idea. And no more gerrymandering, no more money in politics, no more ambition in politics. He took the money and the ambition out of politics. That resonates with people when you tell them about that. So, and what would, if we had that system where you're a dentist, you get tapped in, you serve, you get tapped out, your business is waiting for you, all of this, 6-year terms, he had it all figured out. Among them, they choose amongst themselves the president of the United States. What would they create? And so you think of the conservatives, many of them are upset by the way our government is structured now. And yeah, you don't want to be calling for disenfranchising women or minorities by any stretch of the imagination. But is there not something there when they say, no, this isn't right? This system doesn't produce good results or incentives. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree that there's the institutional problem. Of course, as you said, their solution is disenfranchising women, deporting a bunch of people, maybe deporting like the children of immigrants and their parents. I mean, like you see, they're talking about. Okay, we'll wrap it up. You asked me a question, I was getting to it, and then I'll just we can okay. So clearly, the right wing solution to the institutional problem that we have is a pretty bad one. They want to get rid of suffrage for women. I'm seeing tons of people talk about Zoran's victory and saying Zoran's victory wouldn't have happened if we didn't have all these immigrants here. We should get rid of them. We should deport them. We're seeing a lot of conversation. Of course, Twitter is very radical of a place.
I was just going to say, I will concede to you that there are influencers saying things that sound like Groyper, that sound too far right, that I'm not proud of and that I don't support. And I think, as you noted earlier, that is a bit of how Twitter goes. But I do want to acknowledge that even some of the MAGA influencers that people consider mainstream do say things that are a little too much. And so I concede that as well.
Yeah, well, it's remarkable because some of these people are genuinely really influential Republicans. Mm-hmm. You know, like it used to be like, oh, influencers do their influencer thing, but we have people from the Article 3 Project, which are like fucking in the Democratic Party, just in them. The Republicans have to seize power, dismantle the Democratic Party right now. It's a terrorist entity. That's the rhetoric, right. Mm-hmm. And they're getting retweeted by like government officials sometimes. Right. And so like that's one of the many reasons why I believe the Republican Party is like not in a very good place at all. They're very, very, very much the extreme is kind of in the driver's seat. But what I was saying is institutions. We have institutional sickness. We need to fix it. Republicans, I actually think, are a barrier to fixing that institutional sickness. And let me give you 2 examples. Republicans right now could ban gerrymandering nationwide. They have the power. They don't. They could ban mid-cycle redistricting right now. They're not. Trump has called on Texas to gerrymander, Indiana, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, the largest, most unprecedented mid-cycle gerrymandering effort in the history of the United States. That is damaging our political institutions. That is making the incentives of politicians worse. Are you still there?
All right, everybody. Hopefully I've edited that conversation enough to where you don't really notice that I lagged out about 40 times. There must have been a internet issue on my end. I struggled to hear him when he was speaking. It was like, as soon as he started speaking and I was listening, everything would freeze every time. And then right before he stopped speaking, I would get like a 20x speed version, get caught up on what he said, and I'd be able to respond. And I hope that it all worked. And I think I was able to respond usually to what he was saying, but in real time, the conversation was difficult to have. So I ultimately lagged out at the very end there. And we just said, you know what, why don't you just do an outro, say how great of a conversation it was, and we'll be done for now. And so it was a great conversation. Micah, thank you so much. I wouldn't say you exceeded my expectations because they were so high for you. I think you're a great guy, 22 years old, very impressive young guy, very driven, very knowledgeable, very reasonable. So you met my expectations. It was a great conversation. You kept me on my toes and held me accountable. You were kind. I like you, Micah. Wish you the best. Look forward to having you on again when my internet is better. I mean, it says I've got full bars, and I don't usually have this problem. So, but Micah is like an institution of his own. He's doing more streams than I am, I'm pretty sure. So I don't think it was his internet either. So I'll take the heat on this one. But again, thank you, Micah. Um, yeah, I'll reflect on what you said. I'm always willing to listen to people and have an open mind, young or older. If I get a sense that you know what you're talking about and you have a good heart, odds are I'm going to hear you out. And so that's what I did, and I'm glad I did. Um, these are controversial times. It is very fair to say that you could be standing on my side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle, a different aisle completely, and or the same side. Doesn't matter, and you could have a totally different perspective of what's going on. It's an interesting time, and we're all trying to make this best of it and make sense of it. And so grateful for the opportunity to host you, Micah. What else to say? I've got a great string of interviews coming up, and stay tuned. All right, we're going to keep this thing going. So thank you all, and have a great week. Peace out.